We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
The crew of the Ethiopian Airlines plane that crashed last month, killing 157 people, repeatedly followed procedures recommended by Boeing, but were unable to regain control of the jet, according to a preliminary report into the disaster.
Britain's government redoubles its efforts to win over the main opposition party in a last-gasp bid to avoid a chaotic end to its membership of the European Union next week, after MPs backed a bill to delay Brexit by one vote.
Japanese prosecutors rearrest Carlos Ghosn on fresh allegations of financial misconduct, as the former auto tycoon slams an outrageous and arbitrary detention and vows he will not be broken.
The man accused of attacking two mosques in Christchurch last month will face 50 murder charges when he appears on court on Friday.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. The pilots of the Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 737 MAX plane that crashed last month initially took the emergency steps outlined by the manufacturer, but still could not regain control of the plane. Take a look.
The crew performed all the procedures repeatedly provided by the manufacturer, but was not able to control the aircraft.
The airliner went down soon after taking off on March 10, killing 157 people in the second deadly crash of a 737 MAX aircraft in less than 5 months, forcing a worldwide grounding of the model. The first, a Lion Air crash in Indonesia that killed 189 people in October, led to Boeing issuing a bulletin reminding operators of emergency guidelines to override a specially developed anti-stall system on MAX planes. The pilots trying to regain control of the Ethiopian jet at first followed those procedures to switch off the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, or MCAS, but failed to recover control, the WSJ said, citing people briefed on the crash investigation's preliminary findings. They then switched the system back as they tried to find other ways to control the jet before it crashed. Now, its sources said the latest details are based on data downloaded from the plane's black box recorders. The MCAS is believed to have been a key factor in both 737 MAX crashes. It's designed to automatically lower the aircraft's nose if it detects a stall or loss of airspeed. Before it crashed, the pilots of the Lion Air 737 MAX struggled to control it as the MCAS repeatedly pushed the plane's nose down, according to its flight data recorder. Both the Lion Air and Ethiopian planes, MAX 8 models, reportedly experienced erratic steep climbs and descents, as well as fluctuating airspeeds before crashing shortly after takeoff. Ethiopia has said there were clear similarities in the two crashes. The search for a Brexit breakthrough moved into a different phase, with talks between British Prime Minister Theresa May and opposition Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. The first exchanges were said to be constructive, and they agreed a program of work to try to find a way forward, and further talks are planned. Mr. Corbyn said the meeting had been useful but inconclusive.
She invited us to the meeting, and I accepted the meeting to go there to set out our views. She did put out the government's view, but the whole thing seems to depend on accepting the withdrawal agreement as put forward at the present time in legislative form. Clearly that has to be taken together with the future political arrangements declaration, and we did spend some time discussing that and explored some issues around future trade agreements.
Did you or your side?
Last night, MPs considered new legislation which would force Prime Minister May a longer extension to the Brexit process and to give more power to MPs. MPs just have over a week to sort all of this out, and a new phase came up in the Brexit saga. A new phase wherein both Jeremy Corbyn and Theresa May were saying and suggesting they might be able to come together, but the question is, what might they be able to agree on? Now, there are signs that they are willing to talk, but it's not clear yet if they're willing to move or willing to budge. The uncharacteristic quiet and complete absence of helpful questions from Tory benches came despite a plea for friendly interventions from Downing Street ahead of this week's session. Trust in Theresa May was already arguably at a historic low before her potentially party-splitting offer to Corbyn last night.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week in this chamber, the Prime Minister said the biggest threat to our standing in the world, to our defence and to our economy is the Leader of the Opposition. In her judgment, what now qualifies him for involvement in Brexit?
Prime Minister!
Can I say to my honourable friend, every member of this House is involved in Brexit. I want to deliver Brexit. I want to deliver Brexit in an orderly way. I want to do it as soon as possible. I want to do it without us having to fight European parliamentary elections. To do that, we need to get an agreement.
Now, Labour has its own splits and stresses as well. Take a listen.
Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister sits down later this afternoon with my right honourable friends, the Leader of the Opposition and the Shadow Brexit Secretary, she will hear no doubt that Labour's policy on Brexit is to secure membership of a customs union, the single market and, crucially, to get a people's vote on any deal.
Now, the SNP's votes matter hugely as well. Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has warned against accepting a bad compromise after holding Brexit talks with Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn. Speaking immediately after her own meeting with the Prime Minister, Ms. Sturgeon said she was not much clearer on where May is prepared to give ground.
It's easy for politicians to address, and perhaps it's still, to be frank, not entirely clear to me where the Prime Minister is prepared to compromise. She's keen to know where others might want to compromise, but is not being particularly open about where her red lines might be removed and where she sees the room for compromise on her part is.
I mean, my recollection, and I've been saying this...
And if you're in any doubt how divided everyone is, take a listen to this.
The ayes to the right, 310. The noes to the left, 310. Order. In accordance with precedent and on the principle that important decisions should not be taken except by a majority, I cast my vote with the noes. Yes. So the noes have it. The noes have it.
Well, the MPs have voted on four things: whether or not to have a referendum, whether or not to revoke Article 50 if there looks like being no deal, whether to have a customs union, and whether to have what's called Common Market 2, which is customs union plus single market. And, perhaps unsurprisingly for your viewers, given what Parliament's been doing of late, they voted no to all four options. It's worth saying there's been some movement from last week. Customs union came a lot closer to passing, only 2 votes in it this time round, but still, Parliament hasn't been able to agree on an option to take forward. Now I think the Cabinet can say, OK, the ground is perhaps right to come back to Parliament for a 4th time with Mrs May's deal and say to Parliament, look, we've given you 2 chances to come up with something, you've failed both times, vote for this deal, otherwise next week there's a real danger of no deal.
And so for now, MP's quest for finding a solution is still stuck, and so is for everyone else.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel vows to fight until the last hour to avoid no-deal Brexit.
Ich habe immer gesagt, ich werde bis zur letzten Stunde des jeweiligen Datums auch dafür kämpfen, dass wir zu einem geordneten Austritt Großbritanniens kommen. Das ist im Interesse Runde sehen, dass es eine Frage von Gewalt oder nicht Gewalt ist. Und dazu wollen wir natürlich auch einen Beitrag leisten. Und deshalb werde ich mich dort auch gerade intensiv mit der Situation dort an der Grenze befassen und damit, wie kann man Lösungen finden, die eben einen harten Brexit verhindern können. Und
Speaking at a Berlin press conference, Merkel said that an orderly Brexit would be in interest of Britain, but also in our interest. She said that because of the related issue of avoiding a new harder border between British Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, it would also affect peace in Ireland. She stressed that ultimately the solution has to be found by Great Britain itself and expressed hope that Prime Minister Theresa May will be successful.
Now, in a rushed parliamentary bid to avoid Britain leaving the EU without a divorce deal next Friday, MPs voted now by the narrowest of margins late Wednesday in favor of a draft legislation that would force the government to seek to delay Brexit beyond April 12, the date the UK is due to exit. The vote passed by just one, 313 votes in favor of 312 against in the lower House of Commons, and the bill will now pass to the upper House of Lords for final approval on Thursday, much to the government's annoyance. Take a look.
Order! The ayes to the right, 313. The noes to the left, 312. So the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Unlock!
Now, Theresa May is looking for compromise, so what type of Brexit might take shape? With options running out, Mrs. May switched course and invited Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn for talks last Wednesday in a bid to forge a compromise that avoids a chaotic no-deal departure from the EU in 8 days' time. Now, Corbyn wants permanent ties to the EU customs union, same import duties, so no outside trade deals. He wants to stay close to the single market, and that means free movement of people. Both leaders accept that should change, but what about a new referendum? Now, May is against, and Corbyn has never been very keen. But to many MPs and most Labour members, it's a priority as it is to the SNPs. On Mrs. May's side, some hate the fact that she's talking to Corbyn, lending him legitimacy, they say. But Brexiteers also fear Theresa May's on course to stay too close to the EU. And the angriest Tories want her gone quickly so a new leader can rewrite whatever is agreed. On Corbyn's side, meanwhile, some believe his pre-wish to keep his hands clean of Brexit, let the Tories get the blame for whatever goes wrong. Meanwhile, a Number 10 spokesman said on Wednesday that both parties showed flexibility and a commitment to bring the uncertainty to a close. But Mr. Corbyn said the meeting was useful but inconclusive, adding there had not been as much change as he had expected in the Prime Minister's position.
We had a discussion and there hasn't been as much change as I expected, but we are continuing to have some discussions tomorrow morning to explore some of the technical issues surrounding it, and the meeting was useful but inconclusive. She invited us to the meeting and I accepted the meeting to go there to set out our views. She did put out the government's view, but the whole thing seems to depend on accepting the withdrawal agreement as put forward at the present time in a legislative form. Clearly that has to be taken together with the future political arrangements declaration, and we did spend some time discussing that and explored some issues around future trade agreements.
Now, the Prime Minister wants to agree to a policy with the Labour leader for MPs to vote on before April 10, when the EU will hold an emergency summit on Brexit. But if they cannot reach a consensus, she has pledged to allow MPs to vote on a number of options, including the deal she has negotiated with the EU, which has already been rejected twice by MPs. In either event, Mrs. May said she would ask the EU for a further short extension to Brexit in the hope of getting an agreement passed by Parliament before May 22 so that the UK does not have to take part in European elections.
Can I say to my honourable friend, every member of this House is involved in Brexit. I want to deliver Brexit. I want to deliver Brexit in an orderly way. I want to do it as soon as possible. I want to do it without us having to fight European parliamentary elections. To do that, we need to get an agreement through this House for the withdrawal.
The village of Pettigo is divided by the Irish border, with one side in Northern Ireland and the other in the Irish Republic. Since the end of the Troubles, both sides have reintegrated, but there are concerns that Brexit could cause new division since there's still no agreement on how the UK and Ireland will manage if they have different trade policies either side of the border.
Pettigo still has its old customs post, but it's been decades since it was used. The village is divided by the border which runs along the river, with Northern Ireland on the right and the Irish Republic on the left. Since peace talks in the 1990s, crossing has been seamless, with the line in the tarmac the only noticeable change. But things weren't always this way. Mechanic Mervyn Johnston remembers the Troubles vividly. His garage is right on the border, and as a former member of the British Army, he was a target for Southern Republicans.
Now, this wasn't the original garage. The original garage is on the other side of the road, and that has been blown up completely twice. And where you're sitting now, this was the post office, and there was a bomb disposal chap killed here defusing a bomb.
Despite being the target of 6 attacks, Mervyn says he's put the past behind him, and he isn't worried about the prospect of Brexit bringing back a hard border.
If there comes back a hard border, we just have to put up with it. I don't think it'll ever come back to as bad as it was. There might be a few pockets of individuals that want to keep this going, but there's very few, and I don't think they'll ever get the support to have it like what it was.
Elsewhere in the village, the prospect of Brexit is having some effect. At the post office on the southern side, Northerners have been taking full advantage of their right to apply for Irish EU passports.
Well, after the vote came in, I think it was 2016, very shortly it doubled fairly quick after that. And it's doubled every year since, and huge interest now since the beginning of this year again.
A few miles away, there's another remnant of the old hard border. The villages of Belcoo and Blacklion used to share a railway station, but the bridge connecting them was blown up in the 1970s by British Army engineers to stop it being used by smugglers. Few here expect Brexit to bring such stark division back, and the hope is that it won't reverse years of deepening integration since the Good Friday peace agreement.
Now they say Brexit could wilt the huge Dutch flower trade. Take a look. Now Britain is a regular customer of Royal Flora Holland, the world's biggest flower market. Every day from dawn, a fleet of forklift trucks carries crates of roses, tulips, chrysanthemums, and 22,000 other flower varieties through the world's biggest flower market. But this well-oiled operation, where robotic efficiency meets a riot of color and fragrance, is facing a challenge that could make the hardiest bloom wilt: Brexit.
The total flower industry in the Netherlands is about 6-7 billion euros, and 850 million of that, so that's about 12-13%, is going to the UK.
Now a third of the world's flowers pass through the Netherlands, who redistribute it to other countries. A hard Brexit could leave some of those flowers now stuck at the border.
We don't think we need another agreement with the government, but we need sort of regulations together with customs and quality checks and the harbour authorities, because well, there is a free market, there's free trade to the UK now, and there will be some disturbances along the way.
Political chaos in London has raised fears that Britain could crash out of the EU without a deal, which would mean the return of customs and regulatory barriers.
Yeah, we are working together with Fruit and Vegetables on a solution where you have a sort of paperless pre-clearance together with customs. So when you reach the harbour, the truck can has a sort of private lane to get on the boat. So we are working on.
With historically close trading links to Britain, the Netherlands has been one of the countries most worried about the fallout from Brexit. A Dutch official report this month estimated the cost to the Dutch economy of a no-deal exit at 2.3 billion euros up to 2023, while Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte was one of only 3 European leaders that British Prime Minister Theresa May visited this week as she tried to win support for changes to get a deal through Parliament. In fact, Brexit has already hit the flour industry.
But because the devaluation of the pound sterling, the people in the UK can spend less on flowers in euros. So we already have seen the last 2.5 years that the spending in euros is going down from the UK.
900,000 doses of cholera vaccine have arrived in Mozambique to help prevent an epidemic after the devastation caused by Cyclone Idai. The UN has said amid reports that the disease has already infected more than 1,000 people. Along with ensuring that a second dose of vaccine is made available later this year, preventing people from drinking dirty water is a key priority.
This is cholera vaccine, oral cholera vaccine.
Following the cyclone, a lot of the infrastructure was damaged, so people have limited access to clean water and sanitation, and the vaccine, this oral cholera vaccine, will help protect them from cholera.
The vaccination campaign started on Wednesday in Beira City and the districts of Dondo, Namatanda, and Buzi, providing protection from the waterborne disease for 6 months. Amid forecasts of further rain, the World Food Program announced that thanks to receding floodwaters, it is scaling up aid significantly to 1.2 million people in the rural areas of the four most affected provinces.
The man accused of attacking 2 mosques in Christchurch last month will face 50 murder charges when he appears in court on Friday, according to New Zealand police. Australian Brenton Tarrant was previously charged with 1 murder as a holding measure, but police said Thursday that all the deaths and injuries in the March 15 attacks will be reflected in upgraded charges during his next appearance. Tarrant, 28, will appear via video link in the Christchurch court from a maximum security prison in Auckland. A note from the court this week said the appearance was likely to be brief and would ascertain the defendant's position regarding legal representation and other procedural matters. Tarrant sacked a court-appointed lawyer after his first court appearance on March 16, raising fears he wanted to represent himself and attempt to use any trial as a propaganda platform. The court said Tarrant would not be required to enter a plea during Friday's hearing. The court has now barred media from filming or photographing the accused. Police said further charges were being considered against Tarrant, a self-avowed white supremacist, but didn't specify what they were. They may relate to whether the court deems the attack a terrorist act, something Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has repeatedly labelled the atrocity. However, New Zealand's Terrorism Suppression Act, introduced after the 9/11 attacks, is little used and could complicate the prosecution. Criminal charges such as murder and attempted murder are easier to pursue, although prosecutors may want the accused tried as a terrorist to make the point that right-wing extremism is just as dangerous as its Islamic counterpart. New Zealand's Corrections Department revealed last month that Tarrant was segregated from other prisoners and able to be observed constantly, either directly by staff via CCTV camera. It said he had no access to television, radio, or newspapers, and no visitors. Local media have reported that if convicted, he will likely face long-term isolation to prevent him being targeted by the largely Polynesian prison population over his white supremacist views.
Former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden, who is mulling a White House run, says via video on his Twitter account, after coming under fire over his physical contact with women, that he will be more mindful in the future about respecting personal space.
Social norms have begun to change, they've shifted, and the boundaries of protecting personal space have been reset. And I get it. I get it. I hear what they're saying. I understand it. And I'll be much more mindful. That's my responsibility. My responsibility, and I'll meet it. But I'll always believe governing, quite frankly, life for that matter, is about connecting with people. That won't change, but I will be more mindful and respectful of people's personal space. And that's a good thing.
One in 5 deaths globally are linked to poor diet, experts said, warning that overconsumption of sugar, salt, and meat was killing millions of people every year. The United Nations estimates that nearly 1 billion people worldwide are malnourished, while nearly 2 billion are overnourished. But the latest study on global diet trends published in The Lancet showed that in nearly every one of the 195 countries surveyed, people were also eating too much of the wrong types of food and consuming worryingly low levels of healthier produce. For example, the world on average consumes more than 10 times the recommended amount of sugar, sweetened beverages, and 86% more sodium per teaspoon that is considered safe. The study, which examined consumption and disease trends between 1990 to 2017, also cautioned that too many people were eating far too few whole grains, fruit, nuts, and seeds to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Of the 11 million people, or 11 million deaths attributed to poor diet, by far the largest killer was cardiovascular disease, which is often caused or worsened by obesity. Study author Christopher Murray, director of the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation at the University of Washington, said, quote, "Our assessment suggests the leading dietary risk factors are high intake of sodium or low intake of health foods."
Former Nissan chief Carlos Ghosn was rearrested early Thursday in Tokyo on fresh financial misconduct allegations, with the auto tycoon slamming his detention as outrageous and arbitrary. Prosecutors said Ghosn had been detained over transfers of Nissan funds totaling $15 million between late 2015 and the middle of 2018. They suspect $5 million of the amount was used by Ghosn for personal expenditure. Reports emerged early Wednesday that prosecutors were considering further charges against him, whereupon Ghosn suddenly popped up on Twitter to announce he would tell the truth about his case at a news conference on April 11. His tweet, which his representatives confirmed was authentic, sparked questions about his bail conditions, which were thought to include a ban on internet use. However, his lawyer Hinichiro Hironaka insisted his client was acting within his rights, telling reporters, quote, "My understanding is that he's not banned from using the internet," and prosecutor Kokimoto said the arrest had nothing to do with the tweet. Ghosn was largely credited with saving Nissan from the brink of bankruptcy by tying its fortunes to Mitsubishi Motors and Renault. He was frequently denounced his downfall as a plot by Nissan insiders, wherein he plans to push them into a full partnership with the French firm.
And we're still following the developments on Brexit. The European Parliament just approved a law allowing Britain's visa-free EU visits even after a no-deal Brexit, despite a furious dispute over the status of Gibraltar. The law means British visitors making trips of fewer than 90 days to the Schengen passport-free zone will not need visas, even if Britain crashes out of the EU without a deal in place. The Parliament approved the measure by 502 votes to 81, with 29 abstentions, paving the way for millions of British holidaymakers to flock to the beaches of the Mediterranean this summer, regardless of the outcome of Brexit. Implementation will depend on Britain granting EU citizens the same rights in return. But London has said it will do so, and the principle of the law has broad support. But the text of legislation itself triggered a bitter row in Brussels after member states, at Spain's urging, referred in a footnote to the draft to Gibraltar as a colony of the British Crown. The United Nations does legally list Gibraltar as a non-self-governing territory, but Britain insists it is part of the UK family and that its citizens freely voted to remain British.
For the emperor's abdication on April 30, Japanese workers will enjoy an unprecedented 10-day holiday as a rash of special days combined with the traditional Golden Week in May. But not everyone is popping the champagne corks in famously workaholic Japan.
やっぱり急にこう充電器ドーンと来られても正直何をしたらいいかどう使ったらいいか時間をっていうのもありますしなんかあれですね結構旅行行くのにもみんな混んじゃってすごい高くなっちゃってて、金銭的にも厳しいっていうのもありますし。
And the first public flight of an autonomous aerial vehicle takes off in front of the press in Vienna, Austria. Take a look. The flying taxi, developed by Chinese company EHang and Austrian company FACC, was tested ahead of the coming 4 Game Changers Festival. The Chinese UAV and drone manufacturer have partnered with Austrian aviation services company FACC and mass media firm ProSieben Bensat Dutch One to host test rides for attendees at the 4 Game Changers Festival in Vienna from the 9th to the 11th of April. EHang and FACC are also collaborating with politicians and aviation authorities to define framework conditions and regulations for introducing personal aircraft into the Austrian airspace. FACC CEO Robert Macklinger said, the question is no longer whether there will be air taxis, but when. And we will be at the top of that industry, unquote. The EHang 184-passenger AAV was first revealed at the Consumer Electronics Show in 2016, and the aircraft can transport a single passenger for up to 23 minutes on a single battery charge. The aircraft was initially planned to enter service with Dubai's Roads and Transport Authority in 2017, but the deal fell through.
Rising sea temperatures have wrecked the Great Barrier Reef's ability to regrow, researchers said, highlighting for the first time a 90% fall in new corals since back-to-back heat waves bleached the World Heritage Site. following the unprecedented loss of swaths of the reef, the world's largest living structure, in successive ocean heat waves in 2016 and 2017. The number of new corals measured a year later was found by a team of scientists to be 89% lower than historical levels. The study measured how many adult corals survived along the 2,300-kilometer reef off the northeast coast of Australia following consecutive summers of unusually warm seas that bleached and killed off numerous coral species. It discovered a crash in coral replacement compared to levels measured in years before a mass bleaching event. The population of one species, Acropora, a branching coral that supports thousands of marine species, tumbled by 93%. The team estimated that it would take between 5 and 10 years for the reef's production of baby corals to fully recover, but only if there isn't another bleaching event. Atmospheric temperatures have risen by around 1 degree Celsius since the middle of last century, and coral is uniquely sensitive to fluctuating heat levels. Last year, an expert panel of international climate experts warned that coral structures, including the Great Barrier Reef, would most likely not survive a 2 degrees rise. Coral reefs are home to an estimated 25% of ocean life, acting as nurseries for many species of fish and habitat for birds, sharks, dolphins, and porpoises.
In other environment news, Thailand's junta chief gave the smog-hit northern city of Chiang Mai 7 days to crack down on spiraling pollution, which has seen the tourist hotspot choke on Asia's most toxic air this week. Take a look.
And here's Ben Bernaldez for our sports news.
For the past few years, a new sport has been getting attention, a sport that tests athletes' stamina, agility, and toughness. It's the obstacle course racing. OCR has existed way back in history, even the start of the modern Olympics in Athens, Greece. Obstacle courses were used as training devices designed to build the mental and physical fitness of soldiers, sailors, and marines preparing themselves for combat, as well as civilians interested in strengthening the whole man. In May 2014, Joe DeSena, founder and owner of the Spartan Race, proposed the concept on international governing body for obstacle racing. World champion adventure athlete Ian Adamson accepted the job of leading the federation and sport. Originally called the International Obstacle Racing Federation, headquartered in Lausanne, Switzerland, it sanctions world and continental level events. The sport has reached the Philippines and became a hit for those endurance athletes, CrossFit, and runners. Filipinas Obstacle Sports Federation, a member of the World OCR, was established in 2017 and is working to promote the sport in the country. Allianz has partnered with the POSF to develop and promote the sport in the country. As part of their program, Allianz Conquer Challenge aims to promote the sport and discover athletes that will become part of the national training pool. The recent national qualifying tournament was held last Sunday at the Philinvest City with over 500 athletes who participated. Mohammad Managil boosted his run to get a spot in the national team of the obstacle course racing as he won the men's elite division of the Allianz Conquer Challenge at the Philinvest City last Sunday. Managuil also took home 10,000 pesos cash plus the lowest points allotted for the said race. The first of 4 OCRs that will serve as basis for the selection of the national team that will compete in the inaugural Southeast Asian Games OCR event. VJ Miranda took the second spot for 8,000 pesos and 5 SEA Games selection points, while Jeffrey Regino won third place for 5,000 pesos cash and 6 points. In the women's elite division, Jenny Maganon won it all and like Managuil also claimed 10,000 pesos and 4 points. Sandy Abahan finished second while Glorian Merisco took third place. Meanwhile, it was a tough race for the 5 Aita youths: Gelian Visoria, 17 years old, Ivy Opelayo, 16 years old, Danilo B. Yugyug, 19 years old, Miracle D. Lansang, 21, and Jacob D. King, 22, of Villa Maria Integrated School in Porac, Pampanga, as they competed for the 5K elite male and female categories. Yugyug finished without penalty in the top 15 of the race, composed of 20 obstacle course.
Event is part of history because this is the first qualifying event, because we're forming our national team that will represent the Philippines in World OCR events and in the Southeast Asian Games, which will be played this coming November here in the Philippines. Of course, we're very thankful to Allianz because they're helping the sport. This is not their first event that they're helping the sport. Allianz will also help the athletes, our members of the national training pool and our national team. So thank you to Allianz for making this happen.
Supporting OCR, as you know, Allianz has a very strong heritage in sports because we're using sports as a way for us to connect with the communities we're operating in. Also, as an insurance company, it is in our DNA to promote a healthy and active lifestyle. Now, we can promote any sport, but we've specifically chosen OCR, obstacle course racing, because we believe it perfectly articulates the brand belief or the brand value of Allianz, which is, you know, in life it's very complicated. It's not a smooth ride. You encounter obstacles along the way, but most of the time people are afraid to move forward or to overcome those obstacles. Now Allianz is here in the Philippines as their partner to provide the courage for people to move forward and therefore have better lives and a better future and a better tomorrow.
For EN Sports, I'm Ben Bernaldez and I am 1 with 25.
And the Vancouver Giants overpowered rivals the Victoria Royals. Here's Anthony Sevilla for the report.
The Vancouver Giants take care of business here at home with a 4-0 shutout against BC Division rival Victoria Royals. Giants goaltender David Tendick had 26 saves and notched his 4th shutout of the season and his 50th career win. The Giants bounced back from the recent home loss to the Portland Winterhawks after a long stretch of success at the Langley Event Center, where the team hasn't lost in almost 2 months. The Royals failed to make their mark on the box score, where they were unable to capitalize on all of their scoring chances. The Royals were 0 for 5 on the power play and gave up 2 crucial penalties to Vancouver, which resulted in the game's turnaround. Giants goaltender David Tendick played a huge role in the win, where he stopped all 26 of Victoria's shots on net for his 4th shutout of the year.
Oh yeah, obviously it's nice to get a win, and in this case get a shutout, but I know there's a lot of games left and we got to get ready for playoffs here, and we're all planning to make a big push for the postseason.
Well, he like Trent in games like this can make difficult saves look really easy. I think our defense did a really good job, but there were times that we needed him to step up and make some big saves for us, and that's what both of those guys have done for us all year long. But for David, it has been a tough month, and really happy for him for getting the shutout and his 50th career win, and again, just a real solid effort. Couldn't come at a better time.
A lopsided loss for the Royals on the road, but head coach Dan Price explains how the game wasn't as lopsided as it seemed, despite the end result, and also defends his players' efforts by taking responsibility for the team's breakdowns.
I thought our guys played hard all throughout the game as well. You know, I really have to take responsibility at the end of the day with our team for the result. It was 4 pretty fundamental breakdowns, 2 in D-zone coverage, 2 at the end of power plays, so I need to do a better job making sure we understand our assignments on that. Well, I think the chances were probably pretty close to even. Vancouver did a very good job converting on theirs. Like I said, the first 2 goals they got on the D-zone breakdown sequences, they buried those chances, both shots from their defensemen through screens, and then the 2 basically shorthanded chances. One, the penalty had just expired, but the other one, the penalty was just expiring. So very opportunistic and great job by them.
Vancouver's win makes them 1 point shy of clinching the BC Division banner, the first time being since the 2009-2010 season. Victoria will face Vancouver again at home, where they will take on the Giants 2 more times until the regular season. Reporting from the Langley Event Center, I'm Anthony Sevilla, and I'm 1 with 25.
More than 300 participants took part in the 4th edition of Francis Burger Cup, with a trophy going to the youngest contestant, 20-year-old Anthony Versett.
On peut faire des burgers avec de la truffe, du foie gras et tous les produits les plus chers, mais si les ingrédients ne sont pas cuisinés correctement, on n'aura jamais un bon burger. Donc même avec des ingrédients qui coûtent peu cher, à partir du moment qu'on sait les travailler et qu'on connaît les codes du burger, et ben là on peut réaliser un ingrédient qui prendra le dessus face à la truffe et tous les produits les plus chers.
Le plus important, c'est de s'embêter, se lever le matin, d'aller voir les gens, les producteurs, des choses comme ça, et avoir du goût pour pouvoir les assembler. Et après, tout simplement, on fait des choses très très bonnes. Si on sait cuisiner, il n'y a pas de problème.
Wow.
Making us hungry.
Yeah. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards on Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles, and we're 1 with 25.